humble and standing here. I don't think I was nervous until she started reading about all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, right? So thank you for being here. My presentation is squared right there. It's not coming. So when they sent it to me and said, hey, can you speak on this? And I was like, yeah, I got that. And then I was like, nobody's an authority on this because I go to all the Home Builders Association state meetings and they're in fights and we're in with the legislators and we're always having different views about it. So as I started to think about it, I was like, housing strategies for the coming crisis? No, the crisis is here. The crisis has been here. We are and have been completely behind for years. And after the 2008 housing crash, we started as a nation being somewhere close to 1 million houses behind. All right, so what constitutes a crisis? And so a crisis is an unstable, dangerous, or pivotal. I'm going to read a lot of this to you because it's probably hard to see. So it's an unstable, dangerous, or pivotal situation that exceeds an individual's or an organization's normal coping mechanisms and resources. So the two words that I emphasized very, very distinctly was individuals and organizations. Because in my mind, what's been going on with this all housing has constituted us partnering with other people. So no longer do I feel like an individual that was trying to figure out with the home builders who's building those houses. No longer do I feel like as a Stanton Augusta Waynesboro habitat that I'm trying to organize us to do all of these things. We have so many partners now. And it started because of this housing consortium, right? So it created a network of people that are all trying to do the same good. I tell my wife all the time, if you put good things in front of good people, it'll happen. It'll work. It'll do. So then a housing crisis is a widespread, severe shortage of affordable, available, or safe housing where the cost rise is so significant in housing compared to the salary rate, right? And so I've got some slides later that I'm going to bore you with some stats because I felt like I needed to just plug you into where we're at here and what we got going on. Everybody agrees, and everybody that owns any property says, what I'm paying now and what they're assessing my house at in this area doesn't equal the percentage that my salary is increasing. So imagine being on the backside of that, not as a homeowner already, right? When you think interest rates or you think all the things that are combined there, you'll realize that it's a really hot market. So, Home Builders of Virginia. So I got this text from the CEO, right? So Craig Tolson sends me this and he says, hey, we're at 100,000 units shortfall in Virginia this year, right? We are at a point where if the house that you're looking at increases in price by $1,000, 4,000 Virginians can no longer afford it. So that drops them out of the housing market, right? So they go back to being renters or they go back to trying to figure out the other ways to live. And lastly, the median house price, and it's a little skewed, but you'll see the numbers for us here in a minute. The median house price in the state of Virginia right now is $400,000. It's $400,000 to buy a house. It's skewed a little bit because we have our coastal area and we have our Northern Virginia area that takes that price and that number a little higher than we actually see. So, care of Nest. Look, I like to throw my brands on it. So I get a book from Nest every 3 to 4 months, and I always dig into it because it's great data. I trust them as realtors, and I trust what they have going on. So this particular one is about Stanton. So I did them in order of, I live in Stanton, but I wasn't trying to be biased. We are the Stanton Augusta Waynesboro, so we could get that good SAL acronym as we build. So I went in that order. Stanton, the things I'm going to point out is the red square. Average house is 1,456 square feet. Look here, this is an important one. 1962. That's the average age of the houses built. The number right below it is 12.5%. That is the number, that you can't see it, but 12.5% are the number of houses that are less than 5 years old inside of the city of Stanton. So that tells you that there's minimal growth edges, right? If the age of the house is averaging 1962, and then there's only 12.5 that are less than 5 years old, the market isn't saturated with new homes there, right? Average sale price there, $311,137. That equals out to about $178 a square foot. A little tall. Stanton is the only one that the cost is down 2.1%. I happened to look and I picked up the flyer that was here for Saw Housing, and I realized that we must be pulling numbers in a similar spot because they have Stanton's median household income at $65,581. That's what's there. Those numbers will come important in a little bit. I know I'm stat geeking you right now, and I understand that this portion of it is really boring, right? I understand that, but to know what we need to do, we have to understand where we're at first. Go to Augusta County, average house age 1993, 17.1%, a much better rate, are new homes, right? That are built in the last 5 years. 1,715 square feet, a larger square footage, oftentimes a larger land plot, being a county. But also a $395,386 price tag at $198 a square foot. Medium household there, $82,049. All right, let's do Waynesboro, 1995. We all know that Waynesboro was the boom. We all know that coming across the mountain and having an influx of money coming from the Charlottesville, that area right there, you notice that 37.4% of the homes are newer than 5 years. That is your growth area. It has been your growth area, and it's an influx of people from another area that are coming because it's affordable compared to the second most expensive red dirt in the state of Virginia. It's always been kind of Charlottesville, right? So for some reason, everybody loves that little Piedmont area. Everybody's willing to pay. I worked over there for 15 years, and I worked on multi-million-dollar houses for years at a time. So it is cheaper to come to Waynesboro, and it's not a bad drive over that mountain. I used to do it. That's some of your stats. That's some of what we have in this particular area. So that all tells me that I'm just saying to afford a $350,000 house. We said that 400K is the median for the state. I'm pulling that back to 350 in our area, saying, okay, generally I think you could get a decent house there. With the current rate somewhere between 6.5 and 7, you're generally looking at a gross annual household income of $80,000 to $100,000. Well, if you remember some of the stats we had before, that's not our medians here, right? Our medians are not that. They're 59,000. You're at, the numbers don't match up. Federal, I threw these in just so that you understood. Federal poverty level as of 2026, they moved it to $33,000 for a family of 4. I believe that to be poverty. I grew up in a household of 7. My dad made $35,000 a year. Somehow I didn't feel poor. I was in Buckingham County, right? So 7 of us lived off of $35,000. Of course, inflation moves back a few days ago. For a family of 2, $21,640, and for a single person, poverty level is $15,960. In our area, approximately 7.3% of the county's population are under that poverty level. 12.4 to 13.1% of persons in Stanton live below poverty, and then 11.2 to 11.8 in Waynesboro. So Stanton is often, it's relative, that there are shelters there, there's different things that probably skew those numbers just slightly so that you have, and if you're familiar, Chris, I know that has done the count before, the homeless population travels, right? And so normally they're going to travel city to city. And so depending on what day and what cold and who's got the warm shelter and what's going on, that population number could very well be Waynesboro at that time, right? So at 6.5%, on a $350,000 house, your mortgage is going to be $2,212 per month. All right, you can't see this, and so I'm going to do my best. I calculated and put them in. So the median income, Stanton 65, Augusta 82, Waynesboro 59, right? Almost 60. So then I did 30% of your, and that's a standard industry standard. 30% of your income should be somewhere in what you put into housing. You've heard of people back in 2008 and 2000, as the market shifted, people got what we call upside down in their house. Too much of their income was dedicated to their housing side of things, which left little margin for error. The Alice report says that most people, and I think it's really crazy that this number is still this low, $400 can change whether somebody can afford something. So you can have a $400 car breakdown, and if you're in that Alice population, you may just go from not being able to afford your rent and getting behind. So some of these numbers, if I do 30% of housing and you're in Stanton, then that means you could spend $19,674 a year. In Augusta, you'd have $24,614 a year. And in Waynesboro, you'd have almost $18,000 that you should be spending on your housing based on the median. So I've got a median of what everybody's making. They're making $60,000 in Waynesboro. 30% of that is the $18,000. That's kind of what you should be spending on your house. That breaks down, so Waynesboro, it breaks down to almost $1,500 a month. Have you seen the price? Pull this other, let's see, Waynesboro. Monthly rent average, $860. Monthly mortgage is on $312, you know what I mean? So at $860, I still gotta pay the gas, I still gotta pay the electric, I still gotta do that. It's doable, but if you're anywhere below that median, it's not doable anymore, right? It's become completely not a functioning way to live. So you're up above the 30%, now you're scrounging on everything else, car breaks down, medical problem, you're all of a sudden underwater. We are at 300, the average sale price in Stanton is $311,000. The average price in Augusta, $395,000, close to that $400,000, that's a state average, and then $339,000 in Waynesboro. So that's the stats. Now, I'm here to talk about this thing, dead horse. So, when you beat a dead horse, it is considered to waste effort on a matter that has already been decided, settled, or hopeless. Is hopeless, making further action or discussion points. How many feel like the housing feels like a dead horse sometimes? How many of you feel like you come to these meetings? I went to 17 of them before we did the Blitzville. 17 different meetings that I attended in which I felt like, my goodness, can somebody put a stick in the ground, right? Can we please build something? And that's how we hinged and we ended up doing the Blitzville, because the Blitzville was about, even though 3 of those houses are not set where they would need to go, they are ready to do that. So it didn't solve it. It didn't solve it by any imagination. But we finally were doing something, right? We weren't just talking about it. And that's where I'm at with Habitat. We're trying to figure out how to do something, to be part of something that's bigger than us. That word origin, so I speak Buccanese. If you notice accent, so I've never been called a linguist, but I often look up words or sayings to see how they came about. And it came from the pointless action of whipping a deceased horse trying to make it move. And in housing, that often feels that way. We can put up 380 apartments, right there on Barterboro. They can have 17 new houses and all these amenities, but it isn't touching the surface of the affordable side, right? We're missing the people that we're trying to get to. So, Chris, I got one for you as you take pictures. Not 1, not 2, not 3. Do you know the reference?
Of course, that's LeBron James when he was giving his press conference when he was introduced with the Miami Heat.
And so the basketball reference is because there are not, my point of coming here and talking to you is there are not just 2, 3, there's a million solutions that we need to start working on, right? It seems daunting, but there's a million ways. I don't have, and I am not an authority on how we're going to get through this. I have ideas. I'm going to show you some of the ideas. I'm going to express to you some of the things that we need to do, right? And that's what this is about. So, I've used a term, and I feel like I've almost kind of coined it, graduated housing. So when I say graduated housing, we have to search, and I've searched our files. I went through all of the file cabinets that had any of our homeowners. I think we built 78 houses since our inception in 1993. Proud but not proud of that. Does that make sense? I feel like we could have done more. I've always felt that way. But we have never, I could not find a case in point in which we went from homeless to habitat. And the reason I say that is because if you're homeless, you're in a financial position that doesn't have a credit score that goes with it. You're in a financial position that doesn't allow you to be one of our homeowners, right? So when I use the term graduated housing model, I'm saying to you that in order for us as a housing community, to take housing, we're going to have to get the middle step. We're going to have to get to, yes, my mission is to provide home ownership. That is where my mission is. I'm working hard to filter back down off of that and create some rental opportunities, create some things that are within Habitat that help soften the top end of it, right? If I can foster people from a voucher system into a apartment that they're paying for, into a credit score, and into us, then I've done our job. That's what we need to be doing, right? 25 hours of the 200 they do at Habitat are going to be in the education side, and that's what we're working on. We're working on that May 13th, right? So DeQuadia and I have partnered, and she's going to help us with a first-time home buyers kind of class. We have financial classes, but that's one of the things that we had slack was that piece. We need to find and have available these steps, and I'm going to give you a few of what I think the steps are. Again, there's no one that's an authority. Embrace. I'm going to say thank you to Waynesboro. If you're here from Waynesboro, I'm going to say thank you because 2.5, 3 years ago, you were able to put in a zoning ordinance that was called cottage housing. And so, Jason Hall is the former welding teacher, and I wish I knew how many times he put up with me sitting in his office talking about, had been to Richmond, been down there at the General Assembly, and they were having the housing conversations with the home builders, and they kept saying, cost of materials aren't coming down. The cost of infrastructure isn't coming down. And I'd get in there with Jason and I'd mix it up and be like, Jason, we've got to come up with a solution. How do we stop the infrastructure costs? How do we stop so cottage housing came about. I looked up an ordinance in Winchester, and the cottage housing ordinance from Winchester never been used, but it was on the books. And so I looked it up, started teaming up with the home builders, with the community foundation, and we went down and we had good open conversations with the city of Waynesboro, and they were very open to the idea. They protected themselves. It was smart. They protected themselves. It still requires a special use permit. So the zoning ordinance there, it outlines things, but you still have to have a specialty permit and go through all the processes so they don't just blow up with these cottages everywhere, right? That wasn't the intent. But the intent was to defeat the infrastructure costs, and the intent was to defeat some of the square footage costs. So the way to do that is streets right now are running about 1,300 square foot, $1,300 a linear foot. So if I drive from me to you, it's $1,300 a foot every time I'm going in. Average lot size, we're talking to Augusta County right now in very open conversation about trying to take the lot size frontage down to 60 feet. Currently it's 75 feet. So I did a modest kind of math calculation. I said, okay, so if I build a road, and I build a road that is 60 feet long, and if I happen to be able to build that road straight down the middle and access both lots, right? I get a lot on each side of that road. I have started at $39,000 worth of expense before I've ever touched either lot. So I'm $39,000 in. How can I start at $39,000 and get to affordable, right? So part of the defeating that infrastructure was, okay, cottage housing, park to the exterior, have parking lots, walk in. Don't have to put in all those roads, right? So that's a mode of trying to help the housing crisis, right? The other one is you have common areas, right? You have 400 square foot of common area. You can increase the density. And then the second part of the cottage housing is the ordinance in Waynesboro says up to 1,200 square feet. The city of Stanton nor the city of Waynesboro have a minimum square footage on houses. The building code has Appendix Q, and Appendix Q is relative to any house that is 400 square foot or below. Nobody wants to mess with that because that's tiny home area. And if you get in tiny home areas, you get into a whole, whether it's mobile, whether it's not. So that puts us between 400 and 1,200 square feet are ideal. I can and I have plans that are 3-bedroom houses that are under 1,200 square feet. I can and I know that EMIS has been telling me for years now, it feels like, that the need in this area is 1- and 2-bedroom places, right? I also know that when we talk about mental health post-2020, an apartment may not be for you because I may not be able to share that common wall and hear that noise. But if I can have a cottage and I can start growing in my housing adventure to where I'm actually earning some equity in something, then I'm leading towards the next step. So this is just one of the proposed, hopefully it's going to happen soon, that would start to help solve the crisis that we already have. Okay? Mobile home parks. It's a cash cow. It's a trailer or a mobile home is a piece of personal property, and it is taxed exactly like your car. The difference is 90 units, branch flats. There's 90 units there. The average cost on the ground lease is $330. That's why I say it's cash cow. So at $330 for the strip of land in which my trailer, that is my personal property, not a house that's sitting on it, that personal property could be changed over into a real home, because the zoning, you don't have, it's by rights, you don't have to change the zoning. There's a hookup there for all the things you need. Water, power, electric, right? Gas probably too. So, yeah, so if you think about it, if we could change over trailers from a diminishing asset, right, into a permanent residence, and start someone along the path of gaining equity in a real house, right? Permanent foundation. 15 years ago, Robert Moore told me that they lobbied as mobile home people to lobby and got the Board of Supervisors in Augusta County to pass an ordinance that's still on the books that says you can take the wheels off your trailer, you put it on a permanent foundation, and you turn in the title to it like you would turn your car title in, and now you have that as your bill of sale to have a piece of real estate, and you start being charged real estate taxes on your home, because it's a home. So I absolutely believe that mobile home parks have to be part of the solution, because say I got into a cottage, say I grew a little equity, say I could move to the next step and it might be a mobile home park, say that's what my salary, my median income will allow me, and then if I can grow some equity there because it's actually a permanent home, now I can go, so it's steps, it's scaffolding. When I was teaching, it was all about scaffolding. How do I get you to solve math problems? You can't solve calculus if I don't first get you in algebra, right? So that's what this is about, this graduated housing model, is trying to get us from one point to the other. Off-site construction. So we have already invested some of our Stanton Augusta Habitat money in a 40 by 80 warehouse in which we are starting to work towards having panelized walls, meaning that we're partnering with Builders First Choice, and they have what's called Ready Frame, and that's how we built the houses that were the Blitzville houses. And what they do is they take the need for a really good carpenter a little bit out of the equation, meaning that we send them the house plans, and what they do is they have a factory that pulls the lumber in, cuts it exactly to length to make that wall E101. And that wall has already all the components that would include the sills, the cripples, which are the short studs that are underneath the window sills, the two jack studs that hold the header that's above it, and all of that stuff is pre-cut, and it's bundled in a package, and it says stamped on it where every stud goes. So they send us a little bundle that might be as big as this table that becomes the wall that's there. Now I can take less than skilled labor, and I can take them on a Tuesday when it's raining, and we can build walls for a house. Volunteers want to feel like they're doing something. Well, I've always said that the reason I love carpentry is because I have an end product every day. I drive away from $1 million house over in Charlottesville, and I would stop at the bottom of the driveway, turn and look back and say, okay, we built that wall, we got that to do tomorrow, and it was always a product. So in volunteerism, wouldn't you feel much better about knowing that you had a product? So this is a way we can do it. For our area, we've ventured into, I built the modular house, the conversation I was having with the school teacher now is that we're going to bid on the house that is a modular home right there at the school. Because Habitat has already done that once. We've already set that house once. We've had modular builds. We understand that off-site construction, the lack of labor and the lack of skill can be offset by doing things in a controlled environment, doing it smarter, and then going ahead and having that sense of accomplishment. Infill lots in the city. So the two cities both have no square footage minimum. With the no square footage minimum, it means that these odd-shaped, funny little lots that climb the hill, right? So the top picture you're going to see, I wanted to point out how precarious there are. The lots that I get offered with the brand of Habitat on my chest, there are calls that come into me all the time that say, hey, I've got some land and I want you to come look at it. And 85 to 90% of the time that I come walking up to it, I have to walk up to, right? Because it's land that they couldn't utilize really easily. There was going to cost, infrastructure cost was going to be there. And so we have to figure out how to do that. I was having a conversation with my construction lead today, and he said, hey, you know those properties right there, I looked at them, they're really steep, and I said, so look, we're going to talk to Superior Walls. We're going to say, hey, could you do a retention wall that is the length of that right there? Could we build a smaller house and have it set on stilts? Right? Beach house style. So we are going to have to get creative in how we infill these city lots and how we build homes in what's left of the land. Right? I got a question that wins a t-shirt if anybody answers this question. What is the little white dot that's on the top of chicken manure?
Chicken manure.
Say again?
It's chicken manure.
Well, I thank you. And we might have to build right there.
Chicken, so I
Yeah, it's all chicken manure. The little white dot is chicken manure too, right? Come by the store if you need a different type. Yes, ma'am. So the reason for that question is that's the kind of crap we might have to build on, right? It was a quib that I'm giving you to try to break up the monotony of all those daggone statistics I had you force feeding you, right? That don't stick with you because you're kind of like, I've heard that, that's on that paper, So we are going to have to infill. And I think we got to get vertical. So fix it. Look at my logo. Tell people here. My logo is there because there's a partnership. And there's a partnership that we've been doing. What we realized is that we're trying to grab grant money. We're trying to utilize that money. We're trying to keep people in their homes. We're trying to figure out ways to repair houses. Did we see that we were 4 roofs in just in the city of Stanton? Is that correct? 3 other critical home repairs. So we partnered with, because when we open our critical home repair wing version of Habitat, it comes at a cost. Meaning that if we say, hey, we're going to come fix your roof for you, it's going to be a $20,000 job to fix your roof. What can we do on the affordable side for you that you're basically going to have a second mortgage to pay us back for that? It may only be $20 a month, but you're on the hook to pay us back. So when we got to talking to a local nonprofit, and they were like, we could do it different. We could partner together. We could go out and look at the stuff. We could verify, do some of the testing and whatever it needs, and then we have a grant that could provide the labor. We also have access to materials through GAF that if you're a Gold Star certified roofer, GAF knows that you're going to install it correctly, and when we use you, they will give Habitat shingles. So we're seeing $5,000 worth of donations in clumps. We've done it at least 4 times. So that's $20,000 of materials that we've capitalized on from GAF. Point of that conversation is we've got to fix it, right? There's too many houses that are in place that if they were repaired, they become back into a viable market, right? So that's just another piece of how we get through this crisis. All right, there's no real conclusion. I'm not going to give you a real conclusion. I'm going to do this. Let's keep talking, right? I was told that I had to be up there for 30 minutes and then we might talk for 30 minutes. And I like the talking side of it with you better than me talking. Is that fair? We must have various types of housing. We have to fix the ones that we have. We have to allow density in certain areas. I touched briefly on that, but in the conversation with Augusta, you have primary places you want to build. It is the 2nd largest ag county in the state of Virginia. Ag producing county is Augusta County. So they are very guarded about letting you just build a house somewhere. But you have density zones. Allow that lot size to come down to 60 so that I can increase the density in the already places that have water, sewer, and let's try to do that. Keep people from stealing your farmland. It's fine. But get smart about what you're putting into it, right? We may have to go vertical. Meaning that at times, we're going to have to figure out the younger generation might need to climb some steps. Right? We might need to get up some steps and do some work, have some nice calves, right? And that's just what's going to have to happen because land is at a premium. Land is not getting any cheaper. Land is not getting, there's no more being made. I can't think of the last volcano that went off, that created an island that we all of a sudden didn't have it, especially not cheaply. And then, my wife busted at me because I cussed too much. Damn it. Some of us just have to accept smaller houses, right? I live in a big house because it was an investment. I thought I was going to die young. And And I know now that I've housed so many people in my basement, right? And every time I turn around, somebody else is moving in my basement. Cohabitation. But your first home doesn't have to be your dream home. Your first home could be a nice cottage. It's just you and your wife, right? It could be that affordable, that allows you to then grow the down payment that gets you closer to your next house. And so the American dream is to live with that white picket fence. I don't have a fence around my house because I didn't afford it at the beginning, right? So you gotta graduate. And trim the fat on the affordability side. So trimming some of the fat is some of the regulations. They're working very diligently. The second or third executive order that was put out this year was about affordable housing. So Tricia made the top 5. Housing finally made the top 5 for Augusta Health. That's unheard of, right? So the fact that Augusta Health is saying that housing increases health, right? So these are some of my views, some of the things that we're chasing. These are some of the things that we hope would help. But I can promise you, I'm not an authority to say that these are the end-all, be-all. I'm not an authority to say that these are the only solutions, right? Every time I get around a room full of much smarter people than me, I try to suck up what's going on. I try to suck up, hey, you just came back from, and I want that brochure because I want to know how it is that we can take concrete panelized, insulated panel and create housing out of them at a quick, low-cost, outsourced. I don't have a construction company. I have me, Matt, and a young man that's an intern. We can't build them fast enough. But we're partnering with builders, we're partnering with, so I've seen that Habitat and a lot of the nonprofits are looking to find the right people. We need a plumber, right, all the time, because that's the partnership we have to make. That's what I have for you today, and I'm ready to sit down and just hear what you have to say. Thank you. Thank y'all.